The world was crumbling under my feet, or at least it felt that way, as I trudged through the Montana pines, each step a desperate bid to outrun my thoughts. My boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, Elliot had left me 3 weeks ago, his parting words a knife. "You're too much, Jamie. I can't keep up." Now, alone on this trail, the weight of his rejection clung to me heavier than the backpack digging into my shoulders. The Bitterroot National Forest stretched endlessly around me, a cathedral of towering evergreens and whispering winds that should have soothed my soul, but didn't. I was 27, a graphic designer from Missoula with a life that looked good on paper, freelance gigs, a cozy apartment, a dog named Jasper, but inside, I was unraveling. I'd come out to my family at 19, expecting love, only to get stiff smiles and "we'll pray for you." Elliot was supposed to be my anchor, but he'd cut the rope. I stopped to catch my breath, the crisp September air stinging my lungs, when the sound of hooves broke the silence. A horse emerged from the trail ahead, its rider a silhouette against the slanting sunlight. He was broad-shouldered, wearing a battered Stetson and a denim jacket frayed at the cuffs. His face, tanned and lined from years outdoors, held eyes that seemed to see right through me. "You lost, city boy." His voice was low, gravelly, with a drawl that felt like it belonged to another time. I bristled, wiping sweat from my brow. "I'm fine. Just hiking." He tilted his head, his horse snorting softly. "Hiking with a storm in your eyes like that? Looks like you're running from something." I froze. How could a stranger read me so easily? "I don't know what you're talking about." I lied, my voice sharper than intended. He dismounted with a fluid grace, boots crunching on the pine needles. "Name's Caleb," he said, extending a calloused hand. "Caleb Monroe. I run the Lazy M ranch a few miles west." "You." "Jamie Carter," I muttered, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and lingered just a second too long. My heart gave an unexpected lurch. "Storm's coming," Caleb said, glancing at the sky where clouds were gathering like an omen. "Trail gets rough up ahead. You sure you're good?" "I can handle it," I said, stubbornness flaring. But the truth was, I wasn't sure I could handle anything. Not the trail, not the ache in my chest, not the way Caleb's steady gaze made me feel exposed. He nodded, like he saw through my bravado but wasn't going to push. "All right, Jamie. You change your mind. My ranch is due west. Big red barn. Can't miss it." He swung back onto his horse, tipped his hat, and rode off, leaving me staring after him, my pulse inexplicably racing. I pushed forward, but Caleb's words echoed, running from something. Was I? I told myself this hike was about clarity, about piecing myself back together after Elliot. But every step felt like I was chasing shadows of who I was supposed to be, of a life where I wasn't always apologizing for existing. The trail grew steeper, the air colder. By late afternoon, the sky had turned slate gray, and a low rumble of thunder sent a shiver down my spine. I was no wilderness expert. My hiking experience was mostly day trips, not this rugged backcountry. My phone had no signal, my map was soggy from drizzle, and the realization hit. I was in over my head. Panic crept in as the rain started, first a sprinkle, then a downpour. The trail turned to mud, my boots slipping with every step. I cursed myself for being so reckless. Then, through the haze of rain, I saw it, a flash of red in the distance. A barn. Caleb's barn. I stumbled toward it, soaked and shivering, my pride drowned somewhere back on the trail. The barn loomed large, its weathered boards a promise of shelter. I pushed open the heavy door, and the smell of hay and leather hit me. Inside, it was warm, dry, and quiet, except for the soft nickering of horses. "Thought you could handle it," came Caleb's voice, teasing but not cruel. He stood in the doorway of a tack room, wiping his hands on a rag, his silhouette framed by the dim light of a lantern. I miscalculated, I admitted, teeth chattering. He chuckled, a sound that warmed the air between us. Come on, let's get you dry. He led me to a small room off the barn, where a wood stove crackled. He handed me a blanket and a mug of coffee that smelled like heaven. As I wrapped myself in the coarse wool, I noticed the way Caleb moved, deliberate, confident, but with a quietness that felt like he carried his own burdens. You do this a lot? I asked, sipping the coffee. Rescue dumb hikers? Only the ones with storms in their eyes, he said, his gaze steady. What's got you out here, Jamie? Really? I wanted to deflect, to say something sarcastic, but the weight of the day, of the past weeks, years, pressed down. I'm trying to figure out who I am without someone else telling me, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Caleb nodded, like he understood more than I'd said. That's a hell of a journey. Takes more than a hike to sort that out. We sat in silence for a while, the fire snapping, the rain drumming on the roof. I didn't know why, but sitting there with this stranger, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. You staying the night? Caleb asked, storms not letting up. I hesitated. I barely knew him, but something in his voice, in the way he looked at me, made me want to stay. Yeah, I said, if that's okay. He smiled, a slow, crooked thing that did something dangerous to my heart. Plenty of room at the Lazy M. As I settled into a cot in the corner, I couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter was about to change everything. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the barn's cracked windows, painting the hay-strewn floor in gold. I woke to the smell of bacon and the distant clang of pots. Caleb was already up, moving with that same quiet purpose, cooking breakfast in a small kitchen attached to the ranch house. The Lazy M was more than just a barn. It was a sprawling property with a log cabin main house, corrals, and fields stretching toward the mountains. Sleep okay? Caleb asked, sliding a plate of eggs and bacon across the table. His flannel shirt was rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle. Better than I expected, I said, taking a bite. The food was simple but perfect, grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in weeks. Thanks for everything. He shrugged, but his eyes held mine a moment too long. Can't let a city boy freeze out there. I laughed, surprising myself. I'm not that helpless. We'll see, he teased, but there was warmth in it, like he was testing the waters of who I was. After breakfast, Caleb offered to show me the ranch. I should have headed back to Missoula. Jasper was with a neighbor, and I had deadlines looming, but the thought of leaving felt wrong. So I followed him, my boots crunching on gravel as we walked past horses grazing in the morning mist. This place been in your family long? I asked, watching him check a fence post with practiced ease. 3 generations, he said. My granddad started it. Dad kept it going. Now it's mine. There was pride in his voice, but also a shadow of something heavier. No siblings to help out. I pressed, curious. His jaw tightened. Had a brother. Ethan. He didn't stick around. I sensed the topic was a wound, so I let it drop. Instead, I asked about the horses, the land, anything to keep him talking. His voice was like the land itself, steady, rough around the edges, but alive with stories. He told me about breaking colts, about winters so harsh the pipes froze solid, about the time a bear wandered into the barn. I found myself hanging on every word, drawn to the way he seemed so rooted, so sure of his place in the world. By midday, we were saddling horses for a ride to check the herd. I'd never ridden before, and Caleb's amusement was clear as he adjusted my stirrups. Just hold on and don't spook her, he said, patting my horse, a gentle mare named Daisy. Easy for you to say, I muttered, gripping the reins like my life depended on it. He swung onto his own horse, a black stallion named Midnight, and grinned. You'll be fine, Jamie. Trust me. And somehow I did. We rode through fields of golden grass, the mountains looming like silent guardians. The rhythm of Daisy's steps steadied my nerves, and Caleb's presence beside me felt like an anchor. I stole glances at him. His strong profile, the way his hat shaded his eyes, the easy way he sat in the saddle. My stomach twisted with something I wasn't ready to name. We stopped at a creek to let the horses drink. Caleb leaned back, one hand resting on his thigh, and studied me. "You're not what I expected," he said. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, half defensive, half curious. "Thought you'd be softer. City types usually are. But you've got grit." I flushed, unsure if it was a compliment or a challenge. "You don't know me." "Working on it," he said, and there it was again. That look, like he saw parts of me I'd kept hidden even from myself. The rest of the day passed in a blur of chores and quiet moments. We repaired a fence, checked on a newborn calf, and shared a thermos of coffee under a sky streaked with pink. Every so often, our hands brushed, or our eyes met, and the air crackled with something unspoken. I told myself it was nothing, that I was raw from Elliot, that Caleb was just being kind. But when he laughed at my clumsy attempt to lasso a post, or when he steadied me as I dismounted, my heart betrayed me. That night, we sat on the porch, the stars blazing above us. Caleb handed me a beer, and we clinked bottles. "You ever think about leaving the city?" he asked. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But it's home. My work's there. My dog. Jasper, right?" he said, remembering from our earlier talk. "Sounds like a good dog." "He is." I smiled, then hesitated. "What about you? Ever think about leaving this place?" His expression darkened. "Tried once. Went to Billings for a year. Hated it. This land, it's in my blood." I wanted to ask more, to peel back the layers of this man who seemed so steady, yet carried ghosts in his eyes. But before I could, he stood. "Better get some rest. Got an early start tomorrow." I lay awake that night, the guest room's quilt heavy on my chest, my mind spinning. I'd come to the woods to escape, to find myself. Instead, I'd found Caleb, and I wasn't sure what to do with that. The next day brought a shift in the air, both literal and unspoken. A cold front rolled in, the sky heavy with the promise of snow. Caleb was quieter, his usual ease replaced by a tension I couldn't place. We worked side by side, mending a broken gate, our breath visible in the chilly air. Every so often, I caught him watching me, his expression unreadable. "You're good at this," he said, nodding at the hammer in my hand. "For a city boy." "Stop calling me that." I shot back, but I was grinning. "I'm learning." He smirked. "Yeah, you are." The moment felt fragile, like we were teetering on the edge of something bigger. I wanted to ask him what was wrong, why he seemed so guarded today, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, we worked in silence, the rhythm of our hammers a kind of conversation. That afternoon, Caleb got a call from a neighbor about a missing calf. "Gotta check the north pasture," he said, already pulling on his coat. "You in?" I nodded, eager to stay close, to understand him better. We rode out, the wind biting through my jacket. The pasture was vast, bordered by a dense thicket of pines. We found the calf tangled in some brush, bleeding pitifully. Caleb worked quickly, freeing it with gentle hands, but his face was tight with worry. "Everything okay?" I asked as we led the calf back. He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "This place, it's a lot. Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough for it." The rawness in his voice caught me off guard. "You seem pretty capable to me." He gave a bitter laugh. "Yeah, well, looks can lie." We rode back in silence, the calf trotting beside us. That night, over dinner, Caleb opened up, his words slow at first, then spilling out. He told me about Ethan, his older brother, who'd been the golden child, charismatic, strong, the one meant to take over the ranch. But Ethan had come out as gay at 20, and their father, a hard man shaped by harder times, had driven him away. Ethan left for San Francisco and never came back. I was 16, Caleb said, staring into his coffee. Didn't know how to stand up for him. Still don't know if I could have. My chest ached. That's not your fault. Maybe not. But it's my regret. He looked at me then, his eyes searching. You ever lose someone like that? Someone you couldn't save? I thought of my parents, their prayers like walls between us. Of Elliot, who'd loved me until he didn't. Yeah, I said. I know what it's like to feel like you're not enough. Something shifted between us then, a bridge built on shared pain. After dinner, we sat by the fire, the room glowing with warmth. Caleb pulled out an old guitar and strummed softly, the notes filling the space between us. You play, he asked. Nah, I'm more of a doodler. I pulled out my sketchbook, showing him the landscapes I'd drawn on the trail. He leaned closer, his shoulder brushing mine. These are good, Jamie. Real good. My face warmed, not just from the fire. Thanks. He set the guitar down and looked at me, really looked at me, like he was seeing me for the first time. You're not what I expected either, I said, echoing his words from yesterday. What did you expect? He asked, his voice low. Some gruff cowboy who'd kick me out after one night. He laughed, but his eyes were serious. And what do you see now? I swallowed, my heart pounding. Someone who's real. Someone who makes me want to stay. The air stilled. Caleb's hand brushed mine, tentative, then deliberate. My breath caught as he leaned closer, his lips inches from mine. Jamie, he whispered, like my name was a question and an answer all at once. And then he kissed me. It was soft at first, then hungry, like we'd both been starving for this. My hands found his face, his stubble rough under my fingers. The world fell away. The ranch, the past, the pain. There was only this moment, this man, this impossible spark in the middle of nowhere. When we pulled apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I don't know what this is, he said, but I don't want it to stop. Me neither, I whispered, my heart a wild thing in my chest. But even as we sat there, tangled in each other, a shadow loomed. This was new, fragile, and the world outside the lazy M wasn't kind to people like us. I pushed the thought away, clinging to the warmth of Caleb's arms, but deep down, I knew the real storm was still coming. The next few days were a blur of stolen moments and quiet revelations. Caleb and I fell into a rhythm. Mornings spent working the ranch, afternoons riding through the hills, evenings by the fire where words came easier and silences felt full. I'd never felt so alive, so seen. But with every touch, every shared laugh, the weight of reality grew heavier. I had a life in Missoula. Caleb had the ranch. And we both had pasts that wouldn't let go. One morning, as we mucked out stalls, Caleb's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face hardening. Trouble, he muttered, pocketing it. What kind? I asked, leaning on my pitchfork. Neighbors. The Hendersons. They've been sniffing around my land for years. Want to buy it for their cattle operation. Why don't you sell? Must be tempting. He shook his head. This place is all I've got. It's Ethan's too, even if he's gone. I nodded, understanding more than I said. The ranch wasn't just land. It was Caleb's tether to his brother, to his history. Selling would be like erasing them both. That afternoon, we rode out to check the property line. The Hendersons' fence was suspiciously close to Caleb's, a blatant encroachment. They're testing me, he said, his voice tight. Always have. We dismounted, and Caleb started marking the boundary with stakes. I helped, hammering them into the rocky soil. Halfway through, a truck roared up, dust billowing. A man in his 50s, broad and red-faced, stepped out, Tom Henderson. Monroe, he barked. You're wasting your time. This land's half dead. Sell it and move on. Caleb stood tall, unflinching. Not happening, Tom. You know that. Tom's eyes flicked to me, narrowing. Who's this? Your new friend. The way he said it, dripping with disdain, made my stomach twist. Jamie's helping out, Caleb said evenly, but I saw the tension in his jaw. Tom smirked. Heard you were keeping interesting company these days. The air crackled with menace. I stepped forward, anger flaring. You got a problem, say it. Tom laughed, cold and sharp. Just watch yourself, kid. Small towns talk. He drove off, leaving us in a cloud of dust. Caleb's hands were fists, his face pale. I'm sorry, he said. He's an ass, but he's got influence around here. Don't apologize, I said, touching his arm. I've heard worse. But the encounter shook us both. That night, Caleb was distant, staring into the fire like it held answers. This place, he said finally. It's home, but it's also a cage. People like Tom, they don't forget. They don't forgive. I took his hand, my heart aching. You're not alone in this. He looked at me, his eyes raw. I want to believe that, Jamie. But I've been alone a long time. I kissed him then, fierce and desperate, trying to pour everything I felt into that moment. He kissed me back, but there was a sadness in it, like he was already bracing for loss. The next day, things got worse. A letter arrived from the county, citing a dispute over the ranch's boundary. Caleb read it, his face ashen. They're coming for the land, he said. Tom's got friends in high places. I felt helpless, a city boy out of his depth. But I couldn't leave, not now. What can we do? I asked. Fight, he said simply. It's all I know how to do. We spent the day gathering documents, old deeds, anything to prove the ranch's boundaries. I called a lawyer friend in Missoula who promised to look into it. But the tension hung over us like a storm cloud. That night, as we lay in bed, Caleb's arms around me, he whispered, I don't know if I can keep this up. You can, I said, fierce. We can. But doubt not at me. I was falling for Caleb, hard and fast, but the world outside was closing in. I thought of Elliot, of my parents, of every time I'd tried to be enough and failed. Was I enough for this, for Caleb, for the fight ahead? As I drifted to sleep, his breath warm against my neck, I made a silent vow. I'd stay, no matter what. For him. For us. The fight for the ranch became our fight, a battle that tested us in ways I hadn't imagined. Caleb and I spent days poring over maps and legal papers, our evenings filled with tense phone calls to lawyers and allies. The Hendersons weren't backing down, and Tom's veiled threats grew bolder. One morning, we found a fence post on Caleb's land vandalized, spray-painted with a slur that made my blood boil. Caleb stared at it, his face a mask of controlled fury. This is what they do, he said. They push until you break. They won't break you, I said, grabbing a can of paint to cover it. Or us. He looked at me, something softening in his eyes. You don't have to stay, Jamie. This isn't your fight. It is now, I said, and I meant it. We worked harder, rallying neighbors who'd known Caleb's family for decades. Some were wary, their glances lingering on me, but others stepped up, offering affidavits and support. Slowly, we built a case. My lawyer friend, Sarah, found a loophole in the county's claim, a precedent that favored Caleb. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was hope. One night, as we sat on the porch, Caleb took my hand. You're different, he said. You didn't run. I'm done running, I replied, thinking of Elliot, of my family, of every time I'd let fear win. He kissed me under the stars, and for the first time, I let myself believe in a future, not just for me, but for us. The hearing came a week later, a tense affair in a cramped county office. Tom Henderson sat across from us, his smirk infuriating. But Sarah was a force, her arguments sharp and relentless. Caleb spoke too, his voice steady as he recounted his family's history, Ethan's story woven into it. I saw a few people in the room shift uncomfortably, but others nodded, their faces softening. When the ruling came, it was a victory, partial but real. The boundary was upheld, the Hendersons' claim denied. Tom stormed out, but not before shooting us a look that promised trouble. Back at the ranch, Caleb pulled me into his arms, his laugh shaky with relief. "We did it," he said. "You did it," I corrected, but I was smiling so hard my face hurt. That night, we celebrated with whiskey and music, Caleb's guitar filling the air. But as we danced in the living room, swaying to a song only we could hear, he grew quiet. "What happens now?" he asked. I knew what he meant. Missoula was calling. Jasper, my work, my life. But the ranch, Caleb, this love we'd stumbled into, it was my life too. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I want to figure it out with you." He nodded, his eyes bright with something like hope. "Then we will." Months later, I moved to the ranch. It wasn't easy. Missoula was home, and Jasper wasn't thrilled about the horses at first. But every morning, waking up to Caleb's warmth, the mountains framing our days, felt right. We faced whispers, glares, even threats, but we faced them together. I started a design business from the ranch, blending my world with his. One evening, as we rode out to the creek where we'd first opened up, Caleb stopped his horse. "I love you, Jamie," he said, simple and sure. "I love you too," I said, my voice thick. We weren't perfect. The world wasn't kind. But in that moment, with the sun setting over the Bitterroot, I knew we'd found something worth fighting for. I'd come to the woods to clear my head, to find myself. Instead, I found Caleb, and together, we found home.